Hi, everyone. This is a quick session. I know this is not our regular schedule, but Milan has been kind of reaching out to me, a couple of times a year, maybe three, four times, Milan, just saying, hey, I want to contribute to this project. I want to be able to kind of cover a certain parts of it. And I was like, you know what? It's sunny, it's nice, it's Saturday. Let's just go ahead and talk about it. Milan, how are you doing?
Yeah, everything good. So far
P-
so good.
people
Let's see.
people might not remember you from like 2 years ago, the last time we talked to each other. Do you want to kind of remind people of who you are and what you do and where you're at and all that fun stuff? Don't be too specific
Yeah.
about where you at though. That's just you know what I mean?
Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah. Security wise. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago I stumbled upon your YouTube channel and I watched it and the standard and yeah, everything resonated with me at that time. So I went into it. I learned so much. Yeah, I wanted to help as well, and
hmm
I also applied so many things that I've learned there. So yeah, I kind of also feel that I need to give back, and I
I
like
I
to
really
give back. So, but
I really appreciate that, man. I appreciate your just overall willingness to kind of, explore new things and be able to contribute and build something interesting. This is one interesting project though, because we're basically taking all, you see how I was just telling Kailu this the other day. We built RESTful Sense, right, which is a library that just makes API communications. And then on top of that, we built OpenAI, right? So OpenAI is talking to RESTful Sense to talk to the OpenAI APIs, RESTful APIs. And now we're building on top of OpenAI.NET, we're building this entity intelligence. And then the next step, we're going to be building a desktop and a web application, like a Blazor application, that allows people to just kind of plug it and play in your existing database and talk to your database, right? So that's ultimately the goal there. So we're really close. I really want to show people this because this part is actually really important in terms of understanding the journey here. We're going like breadth and in depth, and I'll explain that part to you in a bit. We basically so there's OpenAI, right? OpenAI is sitting like this. These are just raw APIs. Anybody can integrate with them. And then we went a long time ago. We basically went and built RESTful Sense, which is a library, a standard compliant library that basically does API communication, right? And then on top of that, we basically, this is our last season, that's our season one. We basically build a standard AI.OpenAI. This is our standard compliant test driven project. And, it's really weird, Milan, because every single time I create a new project that I think I know exactly end to end what I need to do, we always discover something new. If you saw this last session, I was literally talking to people about how we need to upgrade the standard to be able
hmm
to handle when exception models are compromised. So now we're building this entity intelligence, which is just another utility system, just a library for .NET developers to go do things with it. So this is the entity intelligence.net, right? So that's that library that we're working on. And then hopefully, and this is a very quick library, and I'm really happy that you're kind of coming in and jumping in to help us out. But on top of this, we're going to be building, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the name is, but it would be something like Talk to SQL or something like that. I don't know. It's still um, Gregory says, "Hey, what's this surprise?" I asked. Sorry, Greg. I haven't scheduled this one because Milan is in. Is it Singapore? Milan,
Yeah,
Singapore.
Singapore. Yeah.
Singapore. So he's been trying to kind of catch up with us, and our time zones are all over the place. So that's the only time I could work with him. So I said he had some questions. He wants to take a certain part of the standard and help. So I was like, all right, let's do that. Maybe talk to SQL or something like that. So look, we're getting really close because this guy here is going to be available for literally anybody out there in the world to be able to talk to their SQL truly using AI, right? And it's actually useful. Like it's not just,
Yeah.
oh, look, I'm asking it questions. This is actually something that business people will be able to use. I still keep my word true though. Like, people that contribute to these projects, if these projects turns out to be revenue generating, I have to find these people and distribute it equally based on their level of contribution on that particular project. So we'll see. It's a very commercial application. This guy here is a very much so commercial application. This one here is still open source, just like the rest of these. This one is still going to be, it's just going to have some licensing on it, but we're going to put it out there and let people use it and see how far we can take it. There's a guy, a lot of people have told me about a lot of guys that have been doing something similar, but in different realms and different communities and different programming languages. That's great, as long as we can actually bring true value out of AI. And once we're done with this project, I just have a ton of ideas. There's another project. You know what's the next project that I want to talk about? Let me just let's just stay here, and I'll tell you about the other project because it's gonna blow your mind.
Okay.
It's something that everyone is gonna need in the very near future, and it has a very good humanitarian aspect to it. Anyway, my dear friend, long story short, you want to take care of, you remember our architecture. We basically went and said we want something that talks to OpenAI. So basically, when I'm gonna just make it like this and say this is my AI broker, and this is our AI service, right? And we're basically going and saying, hey, give me the SQL query, and we basically are putting an AI processing service in here, right? And this is very much so kind of targeted. You want to take the other side of the thing. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this, and this will be, I'm assuming, let's call it data broker, maybe data broker, and then let's, yeah, because this is like a diagram and stuff, we don't have to follow the, yeah, there you go. So data broker, and we need a data service, right? And we need a, let's see here, we need a data processing service, right? So that's basically the order of these. And then on top of all of this, Milan, we're basically going to have something called AI data orchestration service. See how it's AI data orchestration service, which is basically what entity intelligence is in its essence. And then in front of all of this, we're basically going to put a client. And this client, this is our AI data or entity intelligence client. And that's it. So
Maybe one question there. You also mentioned that we will have something like talk to SQL, but I
yeah,
thought that's a broker. Like there are different brokers talking to SQL to any kind of database, right? Isn't that at the end? And then
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I thought about creating extensions. So instead of adding every single type of database into this, that's the question that Kailu is asking. So I wanted to do something like this. It would be standard AI entity intelligence.sql, and then you would have another library called MySQL, like this, and then you have another library that says Oracle, and you have another library. So basically, just like how the entity framework team does it, right? Because you won't be able to encapsulate how each and every database kind of operates and the integration pieces with it. Some of it will be supported by Dapper, some of it will be supported by the entity framework, some of it won't be supported by either one of them. Postgres, for instance, Postgres like that. So that you have all these different libraries, right?
Mhm.
Later on, remember, like this application that I was just talking to you about, this application, ideally, this talk to SQL or talk to your data or whatever, it will basically have all these different versions of these libraries, and it will say select your database or let me go intelligently detect the database, right?
Mhm.
So the end user doesn't even have to know what SQL is or Oracle is or whatever the case may be. And I know that someone is going to come in and be like, oh, let me find data discovery for you. So you don't even have to know what a connection string is, right? Just log into whatever portal you're logging into and let me go list all the databases that you have available. There's a lot of work there. There's no shortage of ideas and work when it comes to these things. But the one thing I can guarantee you just from talking to people on daily basis, this is a really useful app, more than you can imagine, especially even for engineers. Like I was talking to this principal engineer the other day, and he said to me, sometimes I just don't have the energy to go build a SQL client and integrate with SQL client, or go bring in a SQL management service. So if I can just really install a quick app and give it the connection string and play around, I'm good, right? So it's very simple and easy way to kind of, it has a lot of, it's data. Come on, data's gold, right? So everybody wants that. So here's what we did so far. All of this, my friend, is done. Like all of that stuff here is done, right? At least according to the current version of the standard, which we're about to upgrade, right? So this is OpenAI. It's talking to OpenAI. All of this is done. Now we're working here. Like this is where we are kind of sitting and working. You want to take this side, don't you? You want to take this side in here, right?
I mean, that was the idea, but however,
Okay,
it depends
so
on the time zone. Yeah.
okay, so you tell me, you are more than welcome to kind of take on that work and kind of run away with it. I don't know why it turned it into, yeah, it should be like that. There you go. That makes me happy. Sorry, that's just it's just OCD just kicking in. You know, it has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, it's not going to work. So this is SQL. We're just really starting with truly minimum viable product, something that everyone can use, right? This here, by all means, go ahead and run with it. What I want from you is 2 interfaces to be implemented. 2 interfaces. The first interface, basically at this level here, I just want an interface that basically I pass to it a string and it goes and execute that strings and bring it back. You know, it will pass in the connection string in the initiation of that broker, like from the configuration that will be injected in. But I can pass in a string and it will just run a query. So let's take a look what that looks like. If you look at the POC that I created the other day, let me just kind of spin up a Chrome tab here. Here's a POC. So let's go to GitHub real quick. Let's go to POC, and that is entity intelligence. Watch what I did there. I basically went and said, here is my standard AI data. No, that's the client. I want the entity intelligence code. Just a second there. Yeah, this would be basically the really draft, you know, quick and dirty version. Look at this. All I really want to do is to basically go and say connection.query, and I pass in the query to it. So somehow you need to expose an interface, and let's write this in our kind of let's write this in our the issues, right? So let's go here. Here's an issue, brokers, right? Run SQL, right? So what does this mean? We want to be able to implement a broker, a data broker that receives a string as a query and returns a list of dynamic objects.
There I have also a question. Why a list of dynamic objects? We anyway don't know what's coming out, so it's a dynamic object. Why?
Because we don't know what's coming back. That's exactly it. I don't know what's coming back. So the only way for me to be able to I mean, for our needs specifically, you're either, let me show you, for our specific needs, we're really just something that will return a list of tables and their properties, or a list of data columns and their data. So you see this one here, connection query, it returns all tables in SQL, and I basically group them and work with them accordingly, right? So that's one. So it's basically, this one here is interesting. It's wild. Dapper does wild things. If you can find this in Entity Framework, I'd rather work with the Entity Framework. But if we want to go Dapper side, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You know, it's just a tool. I wouldn't be that forgiving if we have to trade off working with a standard compliant library versus a non-standard compliant library. But both the Entity Framework and Dapper and everything else, it's not standard compliant. We don't have a library so far that does that work, but maybe a new generation in the standard community could build that, you know, because it takes a lot of work. So if you look from our needs, really, this guy here returns let me show you what it returns. It returns an IEnumerable of I grouping of dynamic. And you don't have to worry about that part either because Dapper does that for you, right? And that's okay and not a violation of contract because you're still working with less. The main entity here is the dynamic object that you're returning or a primitive type. So number one would be here. Let me show you. So we need two methods basically, right? So retrieve, see here. This here will say retrieve tables with properties. So we basically want something that says, literally just returns that part. Or at least that's my understanding. You may come back and say, Hassan, your assumption is wrong. And I'll be like, totally fine. So this here, I want to go and say, select all tables with properties. And it takes in here no input parameter whatsoever. Right? And then, so that's one. And then I also want an interface that does this. Select, oh no, this is fine. This is okay.
But okay. No, I mean, my confusion was that when we say dynamic, that's something that we don't know what kind of structure it has, right?
And we
How
really
do
don't.
we know? Is it enumerable, like a list, or it's just dynamic, and then we receive it, and then we cast it into something that we understand?
That's a great question. Databases will always return lists, even if it's one result. When you query a SQL database, it always returns at least one row. It's a list, right?
Okay.
It's always going to return you a list of something dynamic like this. What I did here basically is that I basically went and said, this here returned a list of dynamic, and I started grouping these dynamic objects by name. So that's really the only thing, actually, yeah, that's the only thing that you would really want to do in this part, retrieve tables with properties. So this is literally you're going and saying, hit the database, select all tables, and give me their properties. And then you're going to group them later at the service layer or the processing service layer.
I mean, it depends also what kind of query we use, right? There is also query first or query single, and it's gonna return an object, not a list. But maybe
I mean,
just my
no,
thoughts going on.
you're right. Play around with it. I mean, take that query here. Here, I'm gonna give you a reference here, just so you know. This here, this here is what I did in the POC to implement this. Just something for you to discover, but under no circumstances are you obligated to follow that same pattern if you can find another one that's better. Just understand what I'm trying to do. There's two hits that we hit the database with. The first hit is to get every table and every column inside this table and their type. So I'm not getting the data, I'm getting the schema of the database. Are we clear on that?
But
So
now
clear,
we are
right?
talking about SQL, right? Because we are talking
SQL.
about tables already. It's not
Yes,
structured.
this is for SQL. This is like this library specifically for SQL as an MVP. But later on, we're gonna venture into NoSQL and all kinds of different tables. This is specifically targeting Microsoft SQL servers. Okay. The query that I used, and you'll find it in here, it's basically also something I stole from the internet, right? It's a query. Try to hit that query on a SQL database server that you have and just see what it does. It's pretty cool, actually. So if you look at the query itself, it broke it down then the wrong way. But anyway, it basically goes and finds all the tables that are user tables, so it can avoid the system table, so it doesn't kind of pollute your system, right? So that's an interface. It will say select all tables with properties. That's all you need to do, right? To just give me every table and the properties of these table. And be careful, I put top 250 here. That's just me being smart and playing with AI, but you really need to take this out. So that's step one. The other interface, which is a more interesting one, brokers, right? This one here will be for run SQL query. So this is really just, this is the big one. This is us implement a routine with the following signature, and feel free to change the signature if you think that this one makes no sense. Again, IEnumerable of dynamic because that's what Dapper is giving me. And I just want to go and run SQL. I think they allow you to run SQL async, don't they? Let's see, because I'd always resolve to asynchronous option. They don't. They probably do somewhere else, but anyway, run SQL like this, and it takes in a SQL query. So that's the other interface that we need to implement for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So two of these, and we really what we want to do is hit the database, get the database schema, send the schema to the AI. AI now knows what are the table names and the properties. So when a natural query comes in, it will go and say, okay, based on these tables that you told me about, here's how I'm going to build that query. That's why we tell it about the table and the table property and the type on that property. So it knows what's allowed and what's not allowed. Like if a table column is Boolean or bitwise, whatever, it will say, no, I can't pass strings to that. But it's not perfect. It will make mistakes. Like rest assured, we still have to do a retry logic and some crazy stuff. This is how I want to poll Christo and some other smart people in the community to start thinking with me about retry logic and stuff like that. So it looks like we're building projects, but we're actually trying to find patterns to upgrade the standard. But at the same time, our community is growing. It's really a win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation that we're doing here. So, and we're teaching people while we're at it. Okay, the easy
Yep.
route, Milan, to do this is just for you to go and say, okay, I'll just copy the code that Hassan wrote
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
just run it, right? And
Yeah,
I'm okay.
it's a broker, right? It doesn't
It's
do
a
anything,
broker,
just calls the endpoint, right? So
right? So that's the easy part. Let's talk about the hard part. So here's a foundation service, right? And this one will say retrieve all tables and their data and their details. And now you have to define a model, my friend. And you have to map that dynamic object to that model that you have. And it has to be a localized model. Now it gets a little bit interesting, right?
yeah.
Because so let's just think what this model looks like, right? So I know that you will have, ideally, you would have an IEnumerable of tables. That's going to be what gets returned. So table, so this is retrieve all tables with details. And there is no input parameter because you're hitting the database and you're telling me, give me whatever, right? But what is a table? Table model would be, and this is just an assumption, you can go and say, Hassan, you're wrong. I'll be, okay, cool. Show me what's right. String, sorry, this is table, right? Be careful with the ambiguous kind of stuff. But in the table, really, there is something like a public string name. We want to know the table name, right? That's okay. But also we want an IEnumerable of table detail, right? So that's table details. I promise you it's easy. I know you can do this. So what's a table detail?
Key value pairs of column names with
Literally.
values.
But
Yeah.
yep, exactly. So they're just a little bit more really much cleaner than just a, you'll see. So here's table detail, and it has something called,
Name and value.
yep, column name. Exactly. Not value, it's just value type, right? So column type. Because the value is the actual data. We're not pulling the actual data, not just yet.
Mhm.
Schema names. Oh, schema name, is that what we should call it? Christo, like a schema name? Like this? I'm okay with that. Table name, schema name. Milan, it's up to you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so basically that dynamic thing that's coming back, you're gonna group it, right? Because it's giving you a list of dynamics, so the table name is repeated, keeps repeating itself, right? So this is where it gets interesting. Why is that? This needs to be test driven, and it needs to be you need to think about what are the possible exceptions that can be thrown. If you're using Dapper, nobody in the standard community, as far as I know, knows what these exceptions are. You're going to have to kind of play around and see, or look at the source code and see what exceptions does Dapper actually throw. And then we need to handle, localize, and categorize those, right? So yeah, that's the, I mean, instead of table details, I guess like we could call it something like column, right? So this is something like a column, right? Table column or something. And these are columns. And then in here would be like table column, and that's name, and that's
Mm-hmm.
type. That's much better, right? I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Gregory, yeah, I think we need to consider that. Yeah. So you're basically Gregory is saying basically something like you need to, like if you say this is the table name, what's the database, I don't know, schema, something like that, where you basically leave something like DBO,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what he's basically saying. He's saying, I was thinking something like DBO.table name can be specific. My DBO. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Makes sense. But can we
So
get to the point where we decide, okay, is it Dapper or Entity Framework? And since
it's
both
up
of
to
them
you.
support, okay.
It's up to you. Callum, Callum, Callum. Yeah, Callum from us, the standard community. He said, why did you use Dapper? You can use the entity framework. Ideally, personally, I would say go use the entity framework first, try. If you can return a dynamic list without doing any business logic, my man, I'm all game. If you can't, go with Dapper. And also be careful, because a lot of people kind of criticize me. They said, hey, you keep saying entity framework, but you're using Dapper. I'm like, I'm going to put myself out of the comfort zone. I don't care what you think. Like someone was just telling me, the entity framework. I was like, yeah, it's great, but I need to put myself out of that comfort zone and see what happens there. So I also need to fix this. So this would be a table column like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one foundation service. Okay. The second one.
Yeah, things are getting interesting now.
Oh yeah. Oh, you have no idea. The second one is going to be interesting though, because the second one will have to maintain the list or IEnumerable of dynamic objects. There's no way for you around it. So the second one is actually simpler. Basically, you're basically saying run the query. Foundations. Of course, you have to do some validations and stuff, like make sure it has a select statement. If it doesn't have a select statement, throw an error exception, because if someone is doing an insert, that's a security problem. So we have to do some level of validation there, right? So foundation, run SQL query. This one is very straightforward. You're really just calling, but you need to just think about the validations a little bit. The stuff that, yeah, so routine here would be really IEnumerable of dynamic, run SQL. You're not doing anything else other than that. The building of that SQL query is coming from where? From the AI, right? The AI is the one that's, but in here, the challenge here is understand all possible validation options. So just think about, there's structural, right? There is logical, and there's external. right? So there's three levels of validation. There's structural, is it null, empty, or white space? And then there's logical, does it have select, does it not have select? So this is logically is not a good query. And then there's external, when you hit the database and the database comes back and says invalid query or whatever the case may be. Yeah, we dig really, really deep into that stuff. You know, this is a little bit more than if input is null, throw exception. It's way beyond that. We're way past that nonsense, right? Like the standard community as a hive mind, you know, intellect, they're like 20 years ahead of your best enterprise application because they're thinking about things that engineers in enterprise, even if they want to do the right thing, business would be like, we don't have time, go live, we don't have time. So they cut corners, right? We don't have enterprise, we don't have business. We're just sitting here doing things the way we want to. You know what I mean? So,
I know.
and then the people that work with these rules and these principles, they get really fast and really good at it. They become really fast. They beat even the engineers that cut corners because it becomes a second habit. Like look at Kailu when he's typing code, he's going like this, right? Because he's done it like 3,000 times. Like compare
Yes.
him with someone new, it's contrast is huge, right?
Yeah, it's a habit, builds up.
Yep. So this is what we need to do. I'm not even going to ask about the processing service part, but this is what we need to do. Just it's really important to me that you understand the flow. The flow is more important than anything because the flow is where we basically go and say, oh, is someone is sending us a query, right? This query will go we will go hit the database first to get all the schemas, stringify them, send them in a query to the database along with the natural language query, right? And when you apply it to the language query, you know, you basically tells you, okay, you told me there's a student table with ID and name and age or date of birth, and your query is to give me all the students that are under 23 years old. So it should do that magic, that calculation. It should do that for us. I bet
You
you
know,
right now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
you know what would be also interesting when we call SQL and then they return some error, some validation error or something that the query is not correct.
Mhm.
It doesn't. They cannot apply it there. Then we return that back to the AI with the error, and then AI corrects the query for us, and then we call again.
Yep. I mean, we're going to run into a really fun problem. This is why we have processing services because you're limited by the number of tokens that you can send to the AI. Just wait. There is some really fun, tricky things. This is all a kid's play. We didn't get to the serious stuff yet. Niaz bin Mansour says, at this level, we can apply our back. I mean, it depends on the DBAs or the engineers that are putting security on the database, right? The role-based, I'm assuming, Niaz, you're talking about the role-based kind of security stuff. Yeah, I mean, you could, um, but that's outside of the scope of this. Like this is we're querying a database that already has these security stuff already in place. You know what I mean? And I think you mean RBAC because you wrote RABC. I don't know if that's what you mean or something else. I don't know. You know, educate me. I think you're talking about role-based access control. Okay. What do you think, my friend? Ideally, of course, we would tell people, no, no, actually, back to Niaz, actually, to his point, the people that will give this the connection string to the person, to the system, should give them access that's read only. I agree with you 100%. But just in case there's this genius that wants to give AI read and write access to their database, we're gonna have to protect them from their own ambivalence. You know what I mean? So that's just the joke goes, software engineering is a race between engineers and the universe, right? Engineers keep creating idiot-proof software, and the universe keep producing idiots. So far, the universe is winning. so, so, a long time ago, I think Gregory might remember this one. There is a thing called something called PPAC like this, right? Or something like this, which is problem between keyboard and chair or something like that. There's also 10 1D 1D I1T, like idiot or something like that, 0T. Yeah, so IT people would tell each other, oh, I found the problem with the machine. So they don't want to, let the user know what they're talking about. I said, oh, it's a 1D, 10T kind of problem. They're basically saying it's a user error, but it really translates to idiot. I know that Gregory would remember that stuff, but anyway, so anyway, so yeah, so Niaz, yeah, if assuming someone doesn't know how to secure their database, we have to protect them as well because we're good-hearted engineers. That's our slogan, right? We really are good people that want to do good stuff for people. So here's our code. Here's how we build the system. Go ahead and use it and be happy. So, my dear friend, this is your life now. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I'm gonna devote myself. It's an interesting journey ahead of me. So.
I, I, I appreciate that, Milan. What I'm gonna do is that for the sessions with Omar and Kailu and Greg and all these folks, I will stay in my lane here. But if I'm done with this and you're still sitting here, I'm gonna take some of your work. No offense. so you either beat the train because we can only go so far before we do this. The thing that I would do then, I would go build an interface for this processing service, even if it's not done, right? And I'll just go build the orchestration while you're working on the other lane. So this way, dependency injection really is making us better people and better neighbors because we can just work against interfaces. Yep.
Yeah, hopefully I'll keep up. So let's see.
Gregory says we did not know any of those types back. We were them. Okay, cool. Okay, we're clear. We're good. I will make this your milestone. And that's the beauty of GitHub here is that we can make this a milestone. And now this milestone actually means something in terms of all of these tasks. So let's go to issues, milestones. Yeah, this is your SQL Server integration right here. So I will go assign some of these. So I'll take all of these and assign a milestone, which is SQL Server integrations. So that's your milestone. That's your role. And that's how we project manage things or program manage things. So it's all in GitHub. We don't have to worry about Jira, DevOps, none of that stuff. Just all right there with the engineers, right?
Can you also add me to the repo?
Oh yeah. Oh, good call. Like I totally forgot that one. Collaborators. Where's my phone? Let's see here. Come on. Sometimes GitHub just the phone puts it to sleep. So the app is like, I'm not sending you any notifications because the phone put me to sleep. So just a second there. Come on, give me something. Just a sec. I know there's also a way where you can just find the authorization stuff. Get help. Hold on, let me do this again. I know it's gonna come back like two minutes later. I'll be like, oh, did you ask for this? Let's see here. Settings, collaborators, use. Okay, that's a new code. Come on, there you go. Now it's alive. 12, approve. Okay, what's your what's
MTONCIC. Yeah.
Milan Tunicic.
Yeah.
Tunčić, yeah. See, the same mistake that I did 2 years ago. See, it's a problem. The problem's right here. Anyway, so you got what you need, right? What happened? Did Omar just take one of these? No, don't do that. Hold on. See, I literally just created the thing, man. Omar, don't take this. This is not this. Leave this alone. So let's assign this to. Oh, accept the invitation so I can assign it to you.
Oh, okay.
See, I literally just created the issue, man, right in front of you. You you better be done with it.
I mean, it's okay. We can Omar that guy. I mean, we can pair if you want. It's okay. I
Yeah,
mean, it depends on the time zone. So, but yeah.
if this time zone is good for you, it's gonna be good for him, I think, because he's in Canada. You're in Singapore. So what is it in Singapore now? Time in Singapore.
It's 10 a.m.
It's 10 a.m. Yeah. Oh yeah. You two could pair at this time very easily. You'll definitely find time around this time.
Okay, it's accepted.
Accepted. Okay. So now maybe I can refresh. And here is a sign, and here is, there you are. I think you can assign multiple people. Yeah, look, it honors pairing now. So feel free to, I like that. It didn't used to do that. So now it actually recognizes that multiple people could be working on the task, which is pretty cool. What else, my friend? Questions, comments?
Mm, no, nothing in particular now. Let's see. I guess
Yeah,
questions are gonna pop up, but yeah, we can follow
yeah,
up.
yeah. Only work on it if you're excited. I want this excitement to transcend. I know you are. Uh, just it's really important that when you're working on something out of excitement, you're gonna just innovate. Because you're gonna go above and beyond, versus just a kind of mundane daily thing that you have to do. Um, this is why I always tell people, just think really long and hard about what you're doing. You know, this is something like, look, man, like when I was building RESTful Sense, I was working with an intern, right? And I said to her, hey, just heads up, this library is going to be really, really important and it's going to be used everywhere. She thought I was kidding. Let me just show you how many people are using this library now. Look, 112,000 people.
Well done.
That's an entire city. So I know for a fact, I don't know where OpenAI is. Look, we have almost 4,000. So if I search for OpenAI right now, I think we're kind of in the middle of the first page. Are we? Yeah, that we're right here. See? We're
Nice.
above all of these other libraries that, people spun up before. Like there are libraries that were released before us, like in 2021 and all that, and we took over. We're just skyrocketed there. So
Hmm.
I know that a lot of these libraries, the more and more they're involved into systems that we're building, the more and more, we're going to get something out of it, and, we're building tools for ourselves. It's going to help you. I know, Milan, I know for a fact, wherever you go, whatever client you talk to or whatever system you build, if you just run this idea by them, be like, hey guys, what if I just built you a UI where you could just chat with your database? Be like, implement this now because it's useful. Right.
Yeah, I see a value. I got so many questions before from QAs or from POs. They want to run some query. They want to get some data, but they don't know how to run a query or form a query. So it's very
Yep.
valuable.
And then there's a couple of optimization tricks that will keep us within the 4,500 tokens with unless there's like a database table that has like 1,000 columns in it, then these guys deserve that our library doesn't work for them because they need to learn about normalization. They need to learn a little bit about normalization. So anyway, I hope you found this a little bit insightful, and I'm very sorry. I know you've been asking me the questions for a couple of weeks now, but timing and all that. But I think we're off to a good start there. And then Monday, I will have Kailu and the rest of the team just build a processing service for the AI side.
Hmm. Yeah, watch
Cool.
a session yesterday that you had, or day before, I think, and you
Yeah, the
had
exceptions. Yeah.
yeah standard question, and I came to some ideas maybe, but we can take that offline as well, or if you
No,
want.
no, let's go.
Uh,
I'm not doing anything. It's Saturday. Let's go, man.
okay. I just need to open
Yeah.
something.
I talked to Chris Dutui about this, and before he went on vacation, and he said to me he loved the Fluent. assertion idea. But if we can just do something with the model that makes it plug and play, that would be a huge win. But how? How do we do it? What's the answer? I don't know, Milan. You tell me.
Sorry, just a second. Oh, is this okay? Do you see
Okay.
my Notion?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just came to some ideas, and maybe we can share with the others as well if you want. But
Yep.
so, I mean, the question was there. It was regarding the inner exception not being passed, right? Oh, can I share my whole screen here? Um, yeah. Okay, share screen. This entire screen, and then yeah, you should be able to see now my whole screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we go back to the problem, yeah, that was somewhere in the tests, but
Mm-hmm.
where exactly? It was exceptions, validations, right?
Yep. Yep.
Or no, here, yeah. So yeah, in all of those tests, if you are testing against the objects, like comparing whether they're equivalent, but those are not passing inner exception there
Yep.
to
That.
the base, then that's
Yep.
not catched, right? And then
Yep.
yeah, some of the ideas, like I mean, if you take a look here, then if you're not passing something, right,
Yep.
like inner exception, then that can be also catched as a warning or maybe an error if that's one of the ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like
then you can
with
catch it,
code analysis? You mean with code analysis?
yeah, style cop or FX cop.
Yeah, we try to stay away from these because they kind of prevent engineers from building that muscle of detecting this, and not every engineer will be using the exact same tools you are. Like some people are using Writer, some people are using text, some people are using Notepad++, some people are using VS Code. So if you rely on these tools, you kind of, first of all, you don't allow engineers to kind of build that muscle. I want the standard to live here in people's
Mm-hmm.
heads, right? So if they rely on Style Cup and on code analysis to do that for them, right? Now we got ourselves in a trap, because if that engineer is deployed and working in a different place where all these tools are not available, they have no idea what they're working with. We want us to be controlling the machine, not the other way around. So if we tell the machine, tell us what the rules are, people will just try it. And I've seen this a lot, Milan. I've seen people, it becomes so annoying, code analysis and style cup, that they just do exception, like they skip it. They kind of
Mm-hmm.
override the rule, because nobody no longer understands why the rule was there, right? So that code analysis, I know this one has a go ahead, go ahead,
This is
go ahead.
debatable. I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting because this is it's a standard, right?
Hmm.
If you look at the code analyzer, like it enforces the standard of the
Hmm.
code conventions.
Hmm.
So it
But
kind
it
of
doesn't tell people why.
uh-huh. Okay.
Like, it will tell you there's an error, but why is it an error, right? There is this rule in the standard that says the standard should be taught man to man, not machine to man, meaning that someone actually has to spend the time and sit down and explain things to you so you can pick it up and run with it, at least while we have the opportunity, before the machines took over everything, right? There's a very big people first aspect of this. But I'm open to suggestions. Like, I've had people suggest this so many times. They said, well, you won't always have people kind of coming in and reviewing the code. You won't always have people kind of, applying these rules. Some people will forget the rules. To me, I turned forgetfulness, or our imperfections as human beings, into opportunity. Like, if you're a senior engineer and you know the standard by heart, you will definitely forget something. And when you forget something, that's an opportunity for the junior guy to come in and fix it and feel happy that they fixed the code and brought it up to the standard and all that. Again, it's people first. Software itself is trash. Everything we build is trash. It's going to be thrown away. It's going to be legacy within like 5 to 10 years. right? In fact, any company that you go work for or any client you work for, you're going to build them a system and you're going to walk away to the next customer. Some new people are going to come in and be like, this is garbage. Let's rewrite it. It's always been like that, right?
Yeah.
So what really matters, other than just the material benefit, which is the finance and payments and salaries and all that, what really lasts is the communication, the relationships that you built with people. I feel like Style Cup, a code analyzers, automated systems have actually made engineers less and less talk to each other, right? They don't talk to each other anymore. The standard comes in and says, nope, we have to pair program. We have to have an actual person reviewing the code, and the standard needs to live here in our heads, at least while we still have that opportunity, because we won't have that opportunity in like 5 to 10 years. It'll be much harder to even tell whether your colleague is a real human being or a robot. You just can't tell, because some of these people in Japan, they started to create like an almost identical skin tissue, right? That they stick on robots, and now robots kind of do face expressions and whatnot. Like, this is where we are today. Think about 5 years from now, you won't be able to tell whether your next door neighbor John is John an organic or a mecha machine. You don't know. So John could be a toaster. you know, John might forget to kind of pull the curtains at night, and you'll see John backing up towards the wall and sticking himself to a charger.
Oh my god. I don't. I don't even. I don't want to even think about it. Like,
I
it's
don't want to
so
think
dark.
about
Yeah.
this.
Need to erase it from my mind now, Hassan.
Too much sci-fi. But
Yeah.
again, like, if you ask some of the senior engineers, like people that started writing software in the 80s and the 70s, they'll tell you a lot of the things that we're doing today were basically sci-fi at a time, right? Like being able to just hold up a phone like this and talk to someone. That was like, if you remember, there is this cartoon called The Jetsons, right? And people were talking about flying cars and people talking on phones and stuff like that. And before you know it, now it's a reality, right? So what does that mean? If that's a reality, you know, then what we're talking about today and we consider a sci-fi will become a reality very, very soon. And technology is accelerating, right? So if 100 years ago it took about 25 years to bring a sci-fi idea into a reality, today it would be like 5. And maybe in 20 years it'll be like a year, right? And it keeps shrinking like that, so we wouldn't even know ourselves anymore. Gregory says one bot, then two bot, then it goes on. Okay, Greg. So anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is we try at all costs to
Avoid toasters.
John the robot. Yeah, we try to avoid toasters, really. Like, I need to show you this part, and because this is an opportunity to just chat about things. By the way, in essence, really, and I need to be honest with you on this one, the standard really is an excuse to just connect engineers to each other. But if you look at this principle, it's called really no toasters, and it basically says this: the standard shall be taught man to man, not machine to man. No style cups analyzer should be implemented to force people into following the standard. It should be driven by passion in the heart and conviction in the mind. The standard should be taught by people to people. It is meant to foster engineering culture of open discussions, conviction, and understanding. It's specifically saying no style cups, because I saw what happens when people implement style cups. I've seen, man, I worked in a team of engineers somewhere with that specific, time or company. I've worked everywhere for 25 years, so you can't tell. But I worked in some teams where junior engineers were just following blindly what the analyzer and the style cup is saying with no understanding whatsoever. They just wanted to shut it up because it kept throwing errors. You know what I mean? And then
Uh-huh.
the senior, watch this funny part. The senior engineer comes in and says, well, we have a deliverable. Let's just skip it. So imagine this. The junior engineer have been fighting this one style cup error for like a whole day, and then the senior comes out and be like, oh, let's just skip it. That's not a good engineering culture. That is not. You know what this is like? There's this fictitious story. You probably heard about this one. I don't know if you did. They say they brought a group of monkeys, right? A group of monkeys in a scientific experiment, and they starved them. They starved these monkeys, right? And they put like a tree, bananas on top of a tree, and these monkeys at the bottom, and they put the bananas at the top. And every time one of the monkeys tries to go out and get the banana, they would really throw water and beat all of them. Like they throw really cold water on these monkeys. So all of them get punished for the one monkey that tries to go up. Okay, so far so good, right?
Mhm.
They started taking away one monkey and bringing in a new monkey that doesn't have that historical context, right? So the new monkey doesn't understand. So every time a new monkey tries to go up the tree, the other monkeys beat him up. Why they're beating him up? Because they're all going to get punished. They kept replacing the monkeys one by one by one by one until they ended up with a group of monkeys that beat anyone that tries to go up the tree to survive, but they don't know why. They have no context. They have
Yeah.
absolutely no context. That's how some engineering teams are today, right? They're saying, "Oh, Entity Framework is horrible." Why? I don't know, because John says it's horrible. You go to John, you say, "John, why is it horrible?" Because Jane said it's horrible. It's just tribal knowledge that people saying to each other, and they have no idea why they're saying what they're saying. Completely in the blind, right? What does Niaz say? Yes, I have the blind typing problem in my team. Yep. a lot of a lot of the stuff that I'll say is very, very redundant and very common engineering patterns, like in the software culture itself, right? If you are in a team where any design decision you make, right, is not accepted, but there is no standard, there's a person that says that's okay or not, but there is no written standard. That's a very dangerous culture. That's like the savior pattern. There's one guy who knows everything. Management loves him, juniors worship him, and you're stuck with this guy. And that guy is arrogant as hell. He doesn't want to learn anything. So you try to give him new patterns, new ideas, and tell him, let's modernize. And be like, no, 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 I don't want to do that. Why? Because I said so.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
why I wrote the standard. So everyone could follow one a book that is the same rules, and nobody has an overrank over anybody. Ranks are dumb anyway, and I don't believe in engineering management either. Like an engineering manager that doesn't write code is useless to me. What are you doing? Doing PowerPoint slides all day? How's that going to help the customer? Doesn't mean anything to me, right? So anyway, that's just let's leave that part for the podcast, right? um, Maz Qureshi says relatable. Many juniors don't even care. It's not that they don't care. There's nobody really instilled integrity, right? And be careful, because junior engineers become a carbon copy of the leaders. So if the leader is toxic, if the leader doesn't care about test-driven development, if the leader cuts corners, they will be just an exact clone of that. And that's, again, why we're writing the standard, to tell people your leader sucks. Your leader doesn't know anything.
thank God I never worked in that kind of a culture. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm complaining.
try to avoid it at all costs. Um, anyway, bottom line is, you get the tasks, you get the ideas. I know this turned into a venting session, just talking about the history of software engineering. But let's just get that one out of the door, because really there's much more exciting AI projects that we want to build, and there's much more exciting, like Milan. One of the things that I'm thinking about now is basically to build AI that gathers its own facts and gathers its own data. So if I put a camera in here, right, or this very camera right now, AI could describe this situation and build unbiased truth about your side, my side, and what's actually happening between us right now. So imagine if real life events were captured this way, right?
Isn't that how
Imagine it.
Google Maps work? I mean,
What do you mean?
and I mean, there is some detection software or something that happens. Also, the Tesla works in that way, right? It use
No,
something
no,
to
no.
detect
This
that.
is different. I'm saying there's two people standing in front of each other talking to each other, right? An AI is describing the situation and recording the things that are being said. And as these people are doing things, let's say you and I are talking to each other right now, and you stood up and went and got some tea or coffee. AI will say, and then Milan stood up and went and got some coffee. It's recording and writing the event. You know what I mean? What that basically means is that can AI be its own data gathering, facts gathering machine? Right? The one thing that it will never be able to do is to involve emotion into the way it narrates the facts. Right? You see how when you listen to the news or listen to the radio or whatever, there's always this emotion baked into the storytelling. So that's why they say always listen to all sides, because everyone will try to kind of minimize, if not hide, certain parts that doesn't match their narrative. So imagine if we could build something that can document the truth as we know it, reality as we know it, right? But there's more projects. I'm never going to run out of ideas, right? It's going to be really fun. Like imagine if we're building a system that captures a picture by frame and turns it into text, right? And we can test it on movies. We can test it like if we can transcribe. Do you know what a movie transcription is? Like you're watching a movie and you're basically writing down everything everyone said, everything they did, and even the pauses and the face expressions and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have an unbiased system, hopefully, that is documenting exactly what it sees with no bias.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about the applications. I mean, when you mention movie, it also needs to know what's important for us and what not. So if it goes too much into details, then it's also. But I understand the
Yep,
point. Like,
yep. So anyway, we're 2 minutes over. I hope people watching us found this a little bit. I don't know what I have in my camera. I hope people watching this found this useful. And yeah, let me know as PRs open up. I will take a look at them. I will review them every night. Take your time and build it right. There's no PMs. There's no business. There's no marketing team. It's just us. Let's do it right. Okay.
let's do it.
Thank you so much, Milan. Thank you everyone for watching us. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.